Hello, M. Welcome to the show.
Thank
I've
you so much for having me, Miriam.
yeah, we've been in LinkedIn contact, in LinkedIn exchange over many years now. Um, and finally, we made it together here to record and to have a little bit of a chat about facilitation and life and work and maybe even on professionalism.
Uh, First of all, it's always a pleasure when you trade emails for a real talk, and also a little bit of a for me, starstruck. I had a file, just revealing this for the first time, called Miriam, under facilitation with some of your PDFs from previous podcast hosts, so guests. Um, so yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
So I hope that you will answer my next question with yes, because otherwise I would fear that you're a spy if you
Awkward.
have a file about me. So do you call yourself a facilitator?
I do these days, and it's interesting the journey that has been for me because I started calling myself facilitator exactly 15 years ago. But turns out it was for all the wrong reasons. So at the time, I come back from Australia and I was working in Italy for Ernst& Young. And someone from Global asked, we need facilitator for a new senior manager program in Copenhagen, in Denmark. And
Hmm.
it's in English. And I said, oh, wow, what an opportunity to travel, to do something that I love, being around people and visit a place that I've never been before, Copenhagen. And um, and so there I am standing in this room, and I still remember it was strategic opportunity management, effective client encounters, 2 sessions, clicking through the slides, now and then you throw the odd exercise, and and I guess that's what to me facilitation from the outside, and it was really delivering content, and the term facilitations from the Latin, so making things easier, and I was actually making things very easy for myself. Because it was following a script and managing the interactions and making sure that I was coming through as an excellent facilitator.
Mm.
Um, and then I did this for about 8 years, and you add a few tricks and you improve, I guess, in the way that you manage the energy in the room. But then in 2019, I was in near Amsterdam, and I was paired with this lady, Anna Roth, and she was something else. Um, she brought it, and she was so present to what was unfolding. At one stage, she actually stopped the meeting and she said to me, let's get them out for a small break. And when they come back, we're going to put the chairs in a circle and we're going to discuss what is emerging here, which is something that like blocking them in their um, uh, in how they believe they're going to be successful as new senior manager, like some sort of like
Mm.
um, deep concerns that the group had. And so I find, oh my gosh, just letting go. It's all about presence over perfection. She's making space for them, so she's almost disappearing, and so I think that's when I really started to, or I began the process of showing up differently, less about having answers and more about curiosity. And so that label now, I think that at the beginning was probably too narrow and not a true label. I think over time, I learned that this is facilitation, when you show up fully, connect and grow together and really, the shift from the content, which is such corporate principle, to inviting the emergence. So instead of the focusing on the being, the doing, from being with the participants. So I think that's when I really started to call myself a facilitator.
Mm. Oh, thank you for the story. It shows once again that if to really understand it, we need to experience it.
Yes.
And we can read it in a book that emergence and presence and all of these things are important. And until we live it and see the impact, it's just words. And this was in a corporate environment, and you speak about the content. And I wonder what is the expectation and the reaction of the group? Because I assume that now this is the way you lead these meetings as a default.
Mm.
So more an emergence. And I have the impression that especially when we're um, coming from more a training background, and then it's internal, and then it's corporate and consulting, that there's such a big pressure on the content.
Mm.
How do the people react? And how do you find the balance between finding your own flow, being present, and fighting against expectations?
That is such a great question. Another awesome facilitator that I met along the path is called Davide Bottazzi, and then you probably know Delfino Corti as well.
Hmm.
Um, what I learned from David in particular is that people will endure almost anything if you set the right expectations, or if you invite them from the very beginning and now you show up at the door, for instance. And then you take time to make fair deals or to agree on a to-be agenda. And so I think making space for being in a culture obsessed with doing is
Hmm.
actually possible. And we can go into maybe into, what are ways to do that. But what I found is that um, it's a very cliche things to say, but we're human beings before being human doings.
Mm.
And so it's very hard for people to conceptually stop the ball. It's almost like you play a pinball machine game. Every day, the plunger pulls back and the ball is released, and then you are into this moving the flippers for the high score. So
Hmm.
you think that that's life, the bells, the whistles,
Mm.
the new I don't know the terms, but the new score. So the music that goes
I
off.
remember that from my childhood. Yes.
Exactly that music, right? 3 million, 4 million, 5 million. And so it's very hard for people to stop that game when they show up for something different, for
Hmm.
a workshop, for instance, and they expect the same pace, the same rules, the same engagement.
Mm.
And so I think um, when we actually pause and where we invite them into a space that is actually not the corporate training. It's not about the slide. It's about connection before the content. You can really feel a little bit of resistance maybe at the beginning, but there are ways to diffuse that. And then the buy-in is real
Mm.
because I think we're very good at giving people radars and they expect another radar screen, help me get to the next level in my career. And now you're actually saying, well, we're here because I wanted to give you a compass for you to
Mm.
navigate. So they're almost longing for it, but they don't know. So I think it starts with us in how we show up. And I found that, like I said, people will endure almost anything when you actually explain to them that we're here in an environment where we want to cultivate that sort of safety for you to share your concerns, your expectations, um, you know, uh, and we give them space. And inevitably, after a few hours, and again, um, it's really about how you design from the inclusion from the start, that starts to emerge. And what I found is, and this was really evident last year, um, that people, when they leave after 2.5 days, the emotions are really running high, and
Mm.
people are hugging, people are almost, coming down to tears. I have an exercise that I do towards the end, and and I think that humanity is almost seen as, or even the emotions as something that is not corporate. But the truth is that if you can lead yourself from that place that is your best part, to me, that's a key to unlock also the commercial potential.
Mm.
So I
Tell
think
me
we're
more
very
about that.
limited in
Mhm.
looking at it from the doing, where more being will allow to better doing. Um,
Mm.
so I think,
Yeah, there's so much to unpack. Thank you.
mm,
Um, I would be curious about what I'm really curious is about the balance between the expectation and surprise. Because as you were explaining, I can totally see that and know it from experience that everyone is longing for that realness and for
mm,
the change of pace and for the depth. And I think, especially in the corporate everyone is also longing for being treated as adults and experts.
Mm.
Their cups are already full. They don't necessarily need more content from us. They need ways to process and to make sense of it. But it is also uncomfortable because it's out, it's new. So there's uncertainty. So where I'm getting with that is, on the one hand, setting expectations so that they can calm down their nervous system and know what will happen. On the other hand, setting expectations and letting them know that this will be different from everything that they have done can actually also create excitement or resistance. Or maybe not. So, balance between surprise and setting expectations.
Yes, I found that um, one thing that works, of course, you have a content, so to speak, or at least a draft. You have to go through uh, content, but that's more like the what, the topics of discussions or the issues being discussed. So I think in a lot of corporate environments, probably facilitators see themselves as stewards of the content.
Mm-hmm.
What I found is that, and this is how, like you mentioned in the to be together agenda, when you present yourself as, I'm going to be the steward, or how we are going to work together, and we're going to cover, for instance, leading self, leading others, leading in the market. So there is a clear link to their performance. Ultimately, that's what they expect. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm expressive, so I can talk and I can be vision in creative, but a lot of people need more structure, right? So
Mm-hmm.
having an agenda, of course, is good, a high level agenda. Um, but then I'm not responsible for what they'll be working on necessarily. So I'll give you an example. You can
Mm-hmm.
talk about client value and you can go through 25 slides on trust, on client centricity, client foundation, you name it, a very structured approach. And then you can have some case studies on some imaginary fictitious companies. Or you can, because now they bought into some of the playfulness, you can say, you know, let's play musical chairs. And so
Mm.
you put these 35, 40 chairs in a circle, and then you start with, move to the left if you have worked more than two countries, or if you have learned, everybody can decide what. But of course, someone is going to be standing up. And it's a good icebreaker. It's a good energy exercise. But then they probably expect to go back to their tables with their laptops and do some,
Mm-hmm.
slides. And then he says, actually, we stay here. And I think they have methods to go to clients. They've been in so many meetings, and they've got so much experience with how to drive their client value that we can have a discussions. And the discussion in my head is sort of has to cover certain elements that are key for them to know, but I think they know them already, most of them. So you
Don't know
share
the
stories, and if
vocabulary.
someone is stuck and it says, okay, who else has gone through this and how did you handle it? For instance, it
Mm-hmm.
could be how you set the agenda meeting with the client or how you run introductions in a meeting. What happens if someone who was not invited in the meeting suddenly shows up and you're halfway through? How do you handle that interruption, especially if he's a CEO for it? And they always, or 90% of the time, they have great answers. And then you said, okay, we run the same content. Now we go back to the desk, to the islands. And then if there's anything that we haven't covered, but pretty much we've gone through it. So you find that balance between um, holding the process, but at the same time, I think you create the
Mm-hmm.
conditions for the group to do their best thinking. You make sure that everybody's there, that the client value, for instance, is addressed, that the energy flows where it's needed, and let the group own the content and take responsibility for the outcomes of those discussions.
Yeah.
And they're very capable of it. Um, so
Oh,
that's, I think,
yeah. Thank you for walking me through this example. Um, I find it fascinating. So what I hear is, so you start with a energizer, and I wonder why you hesitated to say icebreaker. I'll come back to that. um, with the moving chairs. So basically getting them into their body, and very often we think differently and more creatively when once we move.
Yeah, you
So
really shift the energy when you do that.
exactly. So you get them to move and to think, okay, so who are we in the space and what experience does every one of us bring in? And then basically you go into storytelling about this experience, and then you're taking parts of the story to fill them back into the theory. Um,
I love the way that you can articulate what I said and make it actually not professional, because
it
but
sounds like
make
a
it
process. It sounds like
making
a process.
yeah, make it very vivid for the people listening. So thank you very much for that. I love
Yeah.
it.
And I think it's brilliant. And it's such an easy way to stick to the process and the slides, but instead of using abstract, fictitious companies and abstract theories, using the stories that they just told you, because then they will connect it, they will remember it. And there's research showing that participants actually remember better um, information that has been shared by people they know.
Mm,
So if they're
mm.
kind of colleagues or peers, um, they might connect better to that content than to the abstract content of a trainer. Um, Brilliant. And so I would, two things caught my curiosity. One was you hesitate to use the word icebreaker. And before that, you said after they bought into playfulness. Um, how do you get the buy-in for the playfulness?
Um, two per question, but the icebreaker, I don't really. I don't know. I see this big ship going through the ice and breaking it up. I don't know. It's just in my head.
Forceful.
Yeah, it's a very intense sort
Yeah.
of activity, and I think these sort of energizers, I guess, they're more like um, playfulness, but again, always sort of linked to the content, or because it's not the playful is not about the actual being playful with the musical chair. It's an invitation to show up differently. You're more than your role here. So it's sort of disarming for people, finding themselves the inner child opening up,
Mm.
making room for truth. You can ask questions and people, have to reveal, or actually whatever the question is, or even sharing, you could say, move to the left if you're an introvert. You can get
Mhm.
to know a lot about your people, your friends in the room. So that's why I don't like the word
Mm.
icebreaker. It sounds um, too harsh.
Forceful. Yeah. And I think it got a little bit of a bad reputation as well. So if you start saying, okay, let's do an icebreaker, you get all the eye rolls.
Mm.
Um,
But then the question was around
Playfulness. How do you get the buy-in for the playfulness? Or you just throw them into the musical chairs and
no,
it's
that's a
too
that's
fast for them to resist?
that's a great question. I think it's more like how do you show up from the beginning in in being that bringing that type of energy and playfulness yourself.
Hmm.
So I think maybe it's a cliche, but it really starts with you. So um, you have an agency to show up in a playful way. Um, you have it starts, for instance, even in the round of introduction. There are a couple of exercises that I love doing, depending on the audience as well, and the content. But one is to, we draw each other faces. And so that's really a moment of crayons or pencils, and it is playful, it is joyful, but it also uh, leads to a great connections between people, right? And I'm
Feeling
part of it
seen.
as well, if there are odd numbers. Or we could do it actually in a circle, and then everybody draws a feature of someone else, and then you keep
Mm,
shifting around until you get a complete picture of you.
I love
Um,
that.
so this type of exercises, one thing that I like, again, about linking playfulness, you could say, oh, now introduce yourself to each other, and then, oh, I've been with your wife for 27 years, and blah blah blah. Or you can actually ask them something about, um, t tell us some of the strength or values, in life, a moment of, or a moment you felt proud recently, not necessarily linked to work. Or the one that I really love again, to ask now is, share a useless skill that you have. Again, it comes a moment of hilarity. You get people saying, I'm very good after 3 seconds, I recognize the song, or I can actually read backwards very fast. And then they laugh when they say it because, I had someone saying that, they're great at finding dust in incredible places. Like, so it's still a random introduction, but now it's not about title and function, it really shifts the tone of the conversation. So you bring it from the beginning and you use it lightly, it's
Mm,
not like but you find that freedom to apply it,
mm.
in the space, so to speak, between the slides, that
Yeah,
famous quote about where the
yeah.
music is.
And I think you're tricking the brain in a beautiful way that you trigger curiosity
I
through the
love that. Yeah.
surprise. Because if I know about you that you have been married to your wife for 24 years, yeah, then you're just like so many others. If I know that you're the guy who finds dust in weird places, I'm like, how did you even realize that? So what is the story behind? Suddenly there's this curiosity because it's odd. And I think, or walking very fast backwards. Okay, so how how did you find out? And then you get a story around it. So it's a and I think it's almost automatic if we're confronted with a surprising fact about someone, our brain just wants to know more.
Yeah, and I love what you said about curiosity because when you think about playfulness, it's not like you want to make it a stand-up, comedy club or something,
Hmm.
but because it's not about, gimmicks or cheesiness or it's really about that sort of lightness in approach, that curiosity and the joy. Um, so it's so human, right? In the storytelling that you mentioned, that we mentioned before. So it's not just an activity. It's really like a different energy that people carry into the room, and it's
Mm.
contagious. I get people that are 35 and senior managers and going to partners, so very much executives in the company, doing paper planes. And you think,
Mm.
can you get a bunch of 35-year-old consummate corporate guys, very much serious about how they go to work and in a corporate environment like a professional services firm to do paper planes? And the answer is always yes, and they love it. And
Mm.
it could be that you ask, what is one leadership quality that you want to take with you? And you make it, instead of having some sort of, raise your hand and answer, you actually say as a table, discuss some of the leadership qualities that you appreciate, or that could define your new, rank and role. And then we want you to select one of them. But you also have to select the plane captain. And then you're going to take a sheet of paper and you're going to write that leadership quality that as a group you agree that is an important one. And then that's going to be the name of your airline company. And then the captain is going to fly the plane and everybody else is going to cheer up. And then we go out in the corridors and we do it. And then you debrief on leadership. And of course, then you have all these different plane and different airline companies. And then you drive the point. There was one slide that was saying, leadership is not about one quality. Leadership is many qualities to like it could have been a 2-minute slide, or it can be a 15 minutes engage in exercise where people start to peel on leadership and the
Mm.
understanding that it's when you wear your strength and values in alignments down the corridor at the client that best of you comes out and create ripples, right? You can do the same in a very transactional 2 minute by the script, or you can find yourself 30 minutes late and skip
Yeah.
something else instead. But they're connected on that, and they have a little bit of um, of fun, but also,
And
meaning.
yeah, you're creating memories,
Mm.
and this will let us stick. And I wonder whether once they landed the plane and look at the leadership quality that's written on it, after all the process, they actually want to change it, maybe? because all the leadership that they have experienced through the process of flying the plane maybe realize that there's actually something else that's even more important.
Yeah, it's a great point. Actually, you just made me remember. So one to link it, it's not linked, but I think now you just great insight. You could link it and you could back to at the end. I like to do this wisdom circle
Hmm.
where everyone picks from a bag a stone, and then we go around and we share, that type of leader that we want to be, or some of the quality. It could be anything. It could be a reflection on the 2.5 days we spent together. So it could be interesting to see, is it even for them as a reflection? If you think back of when we did that exercise, has anything shifted, or is there a resonance with what you discussed, or maybe not? So now you've had more time to step into the best of you and
Yeah.
bring it out. Has that changed in any shape or form? Because I think the reason why I believe that we need to make that corporate learning more human is that people are in this race, like in this people machine game, and they never get a time to reflect deeply on who do they want to become, who are they, and who do they want to become. And in my experience, we had programs where it was 6 to 7 people from all over Europe, Middle East, India, and Africa together working on a challenge before they became partners. So it was almost like, you're so close to getting the carrot.
Hmm.
And every year, one or two were leaving in a group of 6 or 7
Wow.
without a fail. And it was always this sort of moment of we had an opportunity through this program to sit down, reflect, and stop the ball from running. And suddenly I realized that I'm neglecting my family,
Hmm.
or that I have so much joy when I go to that client that whenever I come back to the office, my shoulders are sagging and my energy disappears. Or we had a senior manager that went to work for a former counselee, so former formal reports, because they had such a great partnership at work. And when he left and became a CFO after a few years, she decided to join his team, so as a report to him. But that's not the point. So there's always a moment where, you know, so I think it's important that we start to create that human-centric experiences, very early in people's careers, from the minute they walk in, to give them agency and presence and to make sure that they're on a journey that is their journey.
Yeah. And then to grow their talents actually in a way that's consistent and coherent also to their values, because then they will be even more effective in the work they do instead of trying
Absolutely.
to achieve or to grow some skills that are alien to them. And then there's this constant fight against inauthenticity. I think that's difficult because especially in these positions that you describe, a partner of a consulting company, um, you need to have integrity and character and to be your own kind of type of leader and not fit in this kind of sand form.
You bring us something that I'm very moved at times, because I used to be someone wearing different armors and masks. So at the age of 36, I thought I had everything figured out. I had a beautiful house 500 meters from the beach in Western Australia. I had a nice car, Italian Alfa Romeo in the driveway. And and then I found myself on the rooftop. It was a single story, but if you went on the roof, you could see the ocean. So this beautiful sunset every day. With a couple of beers on a Friday night, feeling miserable. And I started to cry. And it was then the onset, I guess, of then um, my divorce and my going back to Italy at the tender age of 37, moving back with your parents, not something that maybe you envisage when you're 24 and you leave
Hmm.
Italy. But the point is that it's such a reality for many professionals to wear armors and masks. And then you wonder why they behave in certain ways, or they sort of move around like an elephant or a dinosaur around people and rooms um, and so I think that understanding that creating a space where they can explore, maybe sometimes for the first time in 12 years or 15 years, their authenticity. And it's a word that is sort of a buzzword, but I strongly believe that authenticity, all it means really in the end is between what you believe and what you say and what you do, is there a gap?
Mm.
And if inevitably there is some gap for everyone, but how big is that gap? And I remember there was an initiative where a senior partner was apparently very successful, but the team has some challenges, and he broke down and he said, I'm being one person to the clients, one person to my reports, one person to my peers, one person to my family, one person to some other corporate friends. And like it's really heavy, and it's really hard to carry yourself around that way. So I think um, again, in if we can make space for being in culture that are obsessed by the doing, because that's what gets rewarded. Um, I see myself as a facilitator, and my invitation also for the people that do facilitation with me in this reality is protect their space, not
Mm.
by forcing it, because I think that's when you mentioned at the beginning, it's a bit of a holding the tension. That's always the hard part. Um, but you can start modeling it, by the way that you introduce yourself, by the way that you slow the pace, or you
Mm.
said, before we move on, I think we need to stay on this one, and you reshuffle the tables or the seating arrangements, and and you stay with them until something deep really lands. So
Yeah. And thank you for also sharing your personal story and all of that. And I think that's a beauty, and that's the accelerator of the effectiveness, I think, of facilitation, where you come from a place where you've done the work. Um, and you can only invite people to lower their armor if you have,
yeah,
because otherwise it feels like an unfair or uncompetitive advantage. How do you call that? Oh, please be all vulnerable, but I have my armor up. Um,
I
feels dangerous.
there's again you it's not a corporate slide, but I have a picture of a Buddha. It's a golden Buddha, uh, and it's a true story of a Buddha that to be preserved by the monks from an invading army was actually covered in plaster.
Mm.
And after many centuries, the monks thought, this piece of junk, quite frankly, maybe we should move it. And it was by actually removing from the temple, accidentally they chipped the Buddha, and there was a glimmer of gold underneath. So they started to scratch, and they just ended up with this beautiful golden statue. So I think we don't have to go far by adding stuff to
Mm.
people in corporate trainings. If anything, we need to help them remove.
Remove.
And and when people say, yeah, but how to? And I think I have on my desktop now a picture of me when I was age 5. And I get the tingles every time I share the story, because I think you were that person already.
Mm.
There's no much you can. So I think, again, making space for that, and for that connection to yourself before you can connect with others, I think is one of and then the environment as well, right? So we can talk about a lot about how to do more and how to, but if you're not grounded into your best self, and if you're not connecting with others in a space in between, in that relational field,
Mm.
how the hell are you going to do the best work of your life? I really don't know.
Yeah.
It will always be coming from a place that is not
Yeah.
it's not the right place, and it's just transactional.
Yes. And what comes to my mind is the concept of compassion,
Mm,
where I notice in myself that when I'm stressed and I'm on the edge and just slightly overworked or very overworked, I'm I'm lacking compassion for others, and it's just a stress response of nervous system overload. But then I get annoyed at bikers in the street. I get annoyed in the supermarket that everyone is too slow. And yes, I will pull myself together in a workshop or a training, but the level of compassion I will have with a group to really adjust to their pace, to challenge them from a place of care and compassion
Mm,
will be lower. So I think the also what it takes to regulate our own nervous system and remove the stress, because I think all of this pretending and the masks and the armor, it adds stress because it is something that we have to keep up that doesn't come natural, and everything that doesn't come natural takes energy,
yeah.
and it's then energy that will be missing for really this presence and challenging the group to leave their comfort zone, but out of care and not out of, "Oh, you want to be leaders? You better start now. We have 10 minutes left."
Yeah. And the not the trick is not the right word, but the invitation for everyone is actually, uh, you don't want to crack that door with people with like force, intensity too much, It's more like a softening that opening, or maybe using the side door,
Hmm.
as an analogy. Um, so y- you invite them gently with, even the way that you ask questions, what is the energy in the room right now?
Hmm.
And then you ask people even to just, throw out numbers, but you get a sense of, or you can say, we did this exercise. What's one word that landed with you? Like you start to um, give prompts, that invite reflection and connection with themselves without requiring to expose themselves to the others
Yeah.
necessarily. So you're not trying to fix anything, or you're just witnessing what is unfolding and without judgment. So very much like a coach, really, a team
Yeah.
coach.
Yeah.
Maybe well, that's a good. I don't know if you have had an episode where do we, you
Draw the
know,
line.
yeah, between coaching and facilitation. But I think again, whenever they feel that it's allowed, because maybe you shared your story, um, um, so it's not demanded, like they do emerge,
Mm. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
emotions and
And the optionality.
mm,
And I'm curious about these separate worlds that we're creating, because so especially in your context, you're inviting them to step into this new space where they get to know themselves and each other differently, and they also experience how this interaction amongst adults can happen in a highly professional context,
mm,
very effectively. And then on Monday morning, they're stepping back into their client relationships. So they're driving to the clients and up they pull the PowerPoint presentations up. What is can you observe a shift in terms of um, once they have experienced it, does it have an impact on how they do the rest of the work? Um, or what would it take?
that's a great question. I'm thinking of there was a big transformation happening a few years ago, and there was a research paper that was actually done by Oxford State University together with EY, and it was really about the importance of emotions and having that agility. Um, So how to prepare and manage the emotional journey, because that is one of the key levers. I think that the research was identify 6 levers, but this was one of the key levers for a successful transformation. And you read it and it says, of course. And then maybe you've experienced the workshop and it says, of course. And yet, on Monday, what will have changed in the way that you that 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 you behave, and it's very little. So I think one of the ways, because to get traction, is to actually make it a practice, to decode the emotions, if you want. Because in cultures that are not emotionally fluent, you can't walk in and say, let's start talking about, for instance, about our feelings on a Monday morning or a Tuesday with our teams. Um, but what you can do when you started maybe with the workshop that was run and you participated, with a container where the emotion was welcome. And for once I felt real. For once I felt aligned. It wasn't forced. It rose through stories. It was through metaphors, reflection. And so you've been modeling emotional presence without being put on the spot.
Mm.
And now maybe you're a little bit more confident in going to the Monday meeting or the Tuesday meeting. Um, because I think ultimately we all want to lean more into that because it's us. And so that authenticity gap is not big. Um, so I think it's more like having that as a practice, in the way that you check in with the team and make it tangible and make it concrete and make it a habit. So you
Mm.
give cadence to it. And I have to say that as I was the learning and development lead for the Nordic Study Y, and I started during this transformation, with my team, and it was really hard to keep up with it
That's it.
because emotions or revealing more of yourself or your state of being, is almost seen as unprofessional. It's suddenly messy or inconvenient. And so, even though you were trying to make people express them indirectly, for instance, through the weather analogy, but it was still very hard to do. So, uh, yeah, I think ultimately people know that they're not PowerPoint. So I think as a facilitator or as a team lead, your real work is to actually help them reveal themselves a bit more, creating
Mm.
spaces where, you know, even by discussing how they're feeling, they can access their own state of being, their own insights. Um, it could be that they realize, oh, this is how I feel today. So um, you confront the facts versus the assumptions. You suddenly said, oh, I'm feeling something that is real and is actually inhibiting the way that I can do my best work today. Or maybe you find ways that you can actually reconnect with practices that make you feel alive and then do the best work of your life, the next week.
Mm.
So I really believe that, if there's not this sort of emotional engagement as a practice, if it's a learning initiative, there is no learning. There is just some information passing through that is forgotten. But if it's day-to-day life, there is no um, progress, so to speak, or improvement, or even learnings, right?
Yeah. And it just shows once again how complex it is. And if I understand you correctly, it's as a starting point, we don't even need to explicitly speak about these emotions,
Mm.
but just give a little bit of space to express something that comes close. I heard you say the weather report, and I think I think I even cited you on that. You said in our exploration call that people don't speak about their emotions, they speak about the weather.
That was I'm pretty sure the first time I heard this was from Gustavo Razzetti, our
Okay,
friend, and
we're citing each other.
yes, yes, yes. And it's so true. So it's really like, I had a workshop on the 10th of June. I still remember the day because I had to fly to go take a train, sorry, to Stockholm, and it was very much with transaction and mergers and acquisition people and strategy. So very corporate, if you want. Um, and that using that metaphor, and I think naturally people do, right? If you say, how's things, at work, and they might say, oh, there's a big storm coming up. So the door is already sort of open, um, but it's still not an easy question. But if you start instead of, saying how's the weather, and then everyone says, oh, it's really windy at the moment, and just leaning into the curiosity of it, is it a tailwind or a headwind?
Mhm.
You know, or they might say it's foggy, or the sun is finally peeking through, because when it's foggy, typically the sun is there, right?
Yeah.
So I think it allows us as facilitators to really um, surface some of the underlying tensions, but without demanding, the full disclosure of what is going on. So
Yeah.
it's just to lead to a more um, direct conversations maybe later, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
And also, I think for many, it's very difficult to really speak about emotions. I mean, I'm still figuring it out. Sometimes I'm
absolutely.
like, oh, how do I actually feel? It- it's difficult to express, and it takes time to then really to lean in and to think, oh, actually, I'm sad. Where's the sadness coming from? Um,
It's not a language that I think most people are brought up,
yeah.
especially, my generations. I'm 52 now, and, my parents were born during the war or before the war, the Second World War. And I don't think they had a lot of time in those days surviving to actually go to this higher hierarchy of needs and say, oh, well, let's display our emotions. Right? So how do you, it was really about surviving. And so I think, what they say about trauma that can um, go down a few generations. So I think it's real. Um, but I think there is one fundamental truth is that whatever is happening at work or in life in general, take the case of any transformation or big change, for instance. Again, I'm thinking back of the research paper because it was really insightful. It says everybody starts on the same page. So people are either positively expectant,
Hmm.
or there might be some sort of queasiness or uneasiness about where this is leading. But typically, people are positively expectant. Um, and so what happens then that inevitably there is maybe some lack of communication or clarity, things start to get a little bit messier or tough. And so that's when the confidence starts to dip, or people start to display different behaviors driven by how they feel. And so I think you don't have to talk about the emotions. You can talk about the weather, for instance, but having that sort of emotional pulse check,
Hmm.
just to understand, you can plot them on a graphic and says, okay, now we have like 75% of the team is not in a good space, and you don't do that to judge anyone. You do that to capture as a team leader or as a facilitator. Maybe today is not the day that we're going to proceed with, some overwhelming task.
Yeah.
Maybe today is the day where we take the foot off the accelerator a little bit, or um, we share stories, or we reconnect through some questions, and we just being together today, not
Yeah.
doing anything.
Yeah. And also to give team members the opportunity to have each other's back and to experience that. Because
Mm.
if one team member has a bad day, um, and then it's good to know that okay, maybe they won't react at their best, or maybe they need a little bit of support, or maybe they're more prone to mistakes. Um, so we better watch out.
And also, what was that in Italian in is what's in English? A, a problem shared is a problem solved.
Mm,
Mal comune mezzo gaudio. So
yeah,
just coming in and checking in and having that line item in your agenda. When we come in, we check in with each other, just connecting and understanding how we're feeling. It could be a group that you're facilitating, or it could be a team. Um, Even if you don't have anything to add, or to actually any answers or
mm,
any, um, I think it's more of making space for it, because ultimately what is the culture is, a culture is people like us do things like this. It's a definition by Seth Godin that I actually love.
mm,
you know So we can create, you know, the way that we actually tackle this, and it's our culture as a team, you know. So I'm a stronger believer in subcultures more than um, cultures. You know, someone asked me, I was in Dubai facilitating for new managers, and they were from India. So I was asking myself, why did we do this in Dubai, not in India? But anyway, and then they said, so Mr. Mazzanti, I'm very curious about what is the EY culture? I've been here for 3 years. And I said, I've been here for 14 years at the time, and I'm buggered if I know. You know, like, what is a culture? You can read it on the poster, but I
Yeah.
think close to you, the people you work with, that is your culture, right? So you can infuse that with this language of emotions. Again, weather, you know, decoding the emotions and talk about the weather. But I think it's important um, because it's happening, you know, and so
Mm.
having that awareness on how people feel about a change without saying, how do you feel about the change? But saying, what is one word that describes your experience at the moment of
Mm.
this?
Yeah.
Um, so,
Or some image cards, some Dixit cards of how they see the change.
uh,
I
yeah,
like that because then you can speak about the card and you see different things on an image that maybe someone else wouldn't see.
okay. I'm not familiar with it, but
Oh, sorry. That was just a
yeah, no, great.
um, yeah, having these kind of different image cards where everyone can just pull one and say, oh, that's what I envision when I think about change. And then you can see people in chains or a flowering garden or total chaos or a ship lost on the sea.
I love cards. You know, I have a set of cards, different ones, but one is from Chad Littlefield,
Hmm.
Canadian, I believe is a Canadian. Um, and they might be value statements,
Hmm.
or they might be questions, or they might be also questions to each other.
Mm.
And they elicit so much, you know. Um, I think anything that will stop the urgency
Hmm.
and we slow people down and getting more into an introspection and then having to share something in a way that is actually safe.
Yeah.
Because by the time you write one word or by the time you pick one card, the most of it is done. So you can share with the person next to you. I
Uh-uh.
picked this because, or I wrote this because, you know,
Yeah.
it's one of the you know, when people say, oh, but um, how do you create a safe space, you know, or how do you invite people? I think it's from liberating structures like this, one, two
Mm.
for all.
Hmm.
That has never failed because it's such a gentle invitation. And then you're sharing something that you've already written. So you just have to read something that you wrote. So typically it's a very low bar.
Yeah.
And 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 the energy that comes up, you have to stop people from discussing as a table once they do the one, two, four, or six, or whatever the table number. So it's yeah. To your
Yes.
point about using prompts like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to go back to the question about the client, and you let me know whether it's appropriate or not. Because I have the impression that, especially working for a big corporate, what you do with your facilitation is you're creating a microculture, basically,
Mm.
for this group. And since you've been with a company for so many years, there's also a an effect that spreads this kind of culture of, oh, there's another way of showing up. And then and within the culture, or within the company, that's kind of safe or that's okay. But then people go out as consultants working with their clients. And then there is something like the corporate culture or this corporate professionalism that they have to represent. To what extent is there even an option to have, or for your work to have an impact on that?
One of the I believe, hopefully, one of the key messages that is left with people is that when you can create a level of professional intimacy,
Hmm.
so again, it starts with how connected you are to yourself, and that's already a big step for many people. If I ask people, what are your top three values or your top three strengths that you bring to work or they make you feel alive? I'm not saying 90%, maybe 75% of people won't have a clue. Or they will name one or two, but they will say, I never thought about it. And just, but so how can you bring yourself, like with a capital YS, yourself to the world when you don't even know who you are, right?
Mm.
So that intimacy that with yourself, this sort of, let's call it like experience or an eye opener for many, or way of being together that they enjoy, that they actually said, I felt human, um, my message is always, bring that to your clients because
Mm.
they're probably navigating the same challenges and stormy waters or lack of awareness, dry desert around them. And that's actually a key to trust building. And
Mm.
ultimately, if this is, to me, this is the link. Ultimately, a professional, in terms of credibility and reliability, what is the difference between me from EY and the guy from PwC or Deloitte or KPMG or BDO, Accenture, McKinsey, you name it? Not much. They've all done the same work. They all can do the same sort of solution, if you want. If Miriam falls sick, someone else will pick up the work and finish it. So in terms of credibility and reliability, you're set. We don't need you. Where do you make the difference for you and for the people that you work with or the people in your team is how you show up.
Mm.
How you show up with empathy, with curiosity, taking less space, um, asking questions, actively, all these beautiful qualities that you experienced here, sharing how you are actually, um, with them. That will unlock so much on their behalf. And so it's in a way, if you want to be really uh, blunt, it's in your interest if you want to be a successful professional to bring that with you. Um,
Mm.
because you're now creating spaces where your clients can maybe access their own insights, or you can really lead to deeper conversations. You can co-create because now it's safe for you to say all the things that I came today, I feel now after we're speaking now that are assumptions. Can we? I know it sounds um, embarrassing, I don't know, for me to say so, but can we take 2 or 3 steps back and revisit where we started? Because I feel like we're not on the same page. I'm building something and you're on. So I think you create that emotional engagement um, where good things happen.
Mm.
So it's more of a mindset
Yeah.
change, and you got a little bit of an opening, a little bit of a crack. Um,
Yeah.
and are you curious enough to then take it with you and make it your way of being with others?
Yeah. And thank you for walking me through. I could envision it. I could actually see what you described and the possibilities. And then I can also see the necessity then to not stop at this leadership training, but actually continue the work of facilitation training, because that is basically what you're describing. Is it's more than just the PowerPoint and the consulting work, but it's the facilitated conversation
Mm,
that onboards the client, and builds these stronger relationships.
exactly right. And I think, the Marco Bergling Staller, the tame the advice monster and stay curious a little longer. Again, a coaching tool, but you bring that to for real. There's such a need to fill the space and to be seen as this ultimate professional. Um, that both as a facilitator and as a client-facing fee earner professional. Um,
Why is
it,
it
it's
so scary? Sorry.
What do you mean, sorry?
Sorry that I interrupted you.
No, why is it so scary
To um to
to show up
lean
with a
in, to be a
PowerPoint?
little bit more curious, to slow down the process when you're in front of a client.
Mm. I guess it's the same need that I felt as a facilitator in 2010, where I come with some content-heavy slides that I know by heart, and I look forward to having some passive learners and metrics that will track the completion of this beautiful training. It's safe, it's clean, it's transactional. And I think you translate that to a person who has been experiencing that in the room, and they say, this is exactly how I go to clients, content heavy slides, passive clients. You ask them and they says, how was the meeting? Oh, they didn't say anything. They loved it. I said, really? And then they gave us, thumbs up at the end of the meeting. And then it says, great stuff. You've been transactional, you've been safe, and it's been clean. And, I guess if you go into the work of Amy Edmondson, on psychological safety, that is exactly that, and growth mindset, that is exactly the type of fixed mindset that
Mm.
works because if you feel safe, I spoke for 2 hours and the clients was in awe.
Yeah.
Um,
And
but the
it's
trick is that unfortunately people are not PowerPoints. And you know, imagine if you wanted to convey the same message, but you make it a conversation with the client. And then you might have that slide already in your pocket, but you don't pull it out. You draw it on a piece of paper with the client.
yeah.
And then suddenly, and the client says, "Oh, but this is exactly what yes, what." And then you said, "I will share with you, you know, the deck when I put it together, with our conversation, and I will share it with you." And 90% you've already done it, but you don't show it. You show up with
Brilliant.
them, and then it's the same thing, but it's completely different because now you have that intimacy and that lack of self-orientation that is driving the trust and most of all, you're not working on assumptions, and it's not transformation. It's not transactional. It's actually transformational.
Mm. I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Um, what remains your facilitation challenge?
Wow, that's a great question. I think the greatest challenge is to really um, stay unprofessional. I know that you've been working on this, and but I think there is this image of a professional or corporate facilitator that is slick, that is about a content that needs to be delivered in X amount of time. And, please do not fall behind the agenda. It's really important that we finish on time, all the whatever, X amount. And I think that in culture obsessed by the doing, showing up and focusing on the being, it's not easy because, like I said, you need to make it a space where more of you as a participant is welcome. Um, so staying in that space and letting go of all the, I believe, aspects that are natural in people. I want to be rewarded with a high score as a facilitator. I want to be back next year. Uh, uh, to leave that aside, so to work on two dimensions. So to come in with that sort of unprofessional in the context of a corporate training mindsets and tools. Um, at the same time, really making sure that you check your ego at the door. That's
Mm.
always been, for me personally, my biggest challenge. I want to show them that the silver hair and the 52 years old with 17 at EY, you know, uh, that I bring that expertise. But I think so. The biggest challenge is create the spaces where really I look after some of the how, but the what we do and the stories and those insights, they really come from them. So almost like a disappearing act. I actually have a picture of
Mm.
last year where everybody's talking and discussing, and I'm just in a corner with my co-facilitator. And I still remember when the photographer came in, I didn't realize it at the time, but I knew exactly what we were doing. And it was so hard to stop them. So you still want to have a moment of debriefing. Um, but I think that's when you do your best work, when you set them up for success and you create containers where even emotions are welcome, not forced, and you let everything arise through stories, metaphors, reflections, and you model that presence without putting anyone, necessarily on the spot. But so that I think that's the biggest challenge to make space for emotions in culture that resist them, and to show up as let's call it unprofessional facilitator
Yes, thank you.
consistently.
Yes, I love that. The unprofessional facilitator. And I think especially in the domain where you work and operate, it's such a challenge. You have to be so grounded in your integrity and authenticity. It's just my assumption because I'm so when I work with groups, I'm always coming in as the outsider. And there are a few
Mm.
things that I do. I usually start my trainings and workshops with a stretch, some sort
No, I
of
love
body
it.
stretching. Um, and almost every time I question myself, oh, maybe for this group it would go a little bit too far. Or maybe how would they react? Or maybe they're too senior. Maybe. Um, so it doesn't become easier. And every time that I bring in my air quotes unprofessional techniques to maybe be a little bit more on the woo-woo side than they're expecting it, um, it's always a fight, an internal fight. Like, would they judge me? How will I be
Mm.
perceived? Can I even do that? Can I break the rules? Although it seems as if the rules are just in my mind. Um, but yeah, this professional box. I think it's, yeah, difficult to break out.
Maybe I take that as my next challenge to bring that breathing exercises or stretching, because I always felt that's the limit where I have never crossed that line of actually going. Um, there is an exercise that is actually quite fun, and if people have in necess almost everybody these days, they come into the room with their mobile phones,
Hmm.
and suddenly their mobile phones they're either in their pockets or in front of them on the table. And so you can combine stretching and setting rules in a way that it's a yoga lattes, or you can make fun of the name exercise where they literally bring the phone to their hands and they start stretching upwards and downwards and sideways, and then you
Weightlifting.
tell them now go all the way to the left, and then now you drop the phone, no, drop the phone, place the phone down on the table, and inevitably is on in front of the person next door to them. And then you say, now you're the person next door to you to your left is your best friend because they're gonna hold to your phone
I love
until
that.
until the break. And they laugh and says, no, but I'm serious. So, again, it's like setting a rule of engagement, if you, I don't like rules, but setting a way of being together, and at the same time you actually have done a little bit of a stretching. So that I've done, but I like to bring breathing because I think it's a really key component of, even for myself, grounding yourself. Um, but yeah, so thank you for sharing that. I'll take that as a challenge
Yes.
for the next
Um,
workshop.
yeah, the beauty is that everyone looks a little bit weird at the beginning, like, is she serious? And then once they start, and I tell them we are sitting all day and just bring our bodies in, everyone loves it so much. Um,
You can make fun of it, right?
yeah,
Inevitably, corporate trainings, there are more sweets and
yes,
sandwiches that you can eat in a
yeah.
day. So you say, we could do like a 2-minute break to go outside and get more cake. Or research shows, I'm not sure because I've never done it before, but research shows that 20 squats are the equivalent of a candy bar. why don't we give it a go? And then you get everybody to stand up and do the 20 squats.
Yeah, I
And then
like
you
that.
ask, how does it feel? Like I'm doing research. Yeah, you're my benchmark, number one. So, so again, you bring that playfulness and you bring that little bit of activity, a
Yeah.
physical activity. Um,
And I think especially in the break and thinking of the phone, so to create this human connection between people, and to give them the opportunity to exchange a glance and maybe even a word and a laugh. So what you described with the place your phone on the table of your neighbor, and then inevitably they will look at each other, kind of smile, like, I watch you. So there
yeah,
is this kind of allyship between them.
yeah,
Um, and there's, yeah, the accountability. Okay, make sure that you don't get on your phone because most of us know that it's just a stress response, or it's what used to be the cigarette, right? It's our pacifier. Um, Love that. I will remember that. I can't believe that the time is almost up. I would have so many more questions. Um, for another time. Uh, if you could go back in time, and I have two more questions. If you could go back in time, what would be your advice to your younger self?
my best advice, whether it's a facilitator or as a professional, would be to forget what other people opinions or a certain image of you as a professional needs to look like, and look at that 5-year-old kid
Mm,
climbing mountains, that sense of possibility, of that endurance, that playfulness, that joy, it's always been there accessible to you. And all the things that you've put on top, they're just a distraction and a white noise most of the time.
mm,
You know, I found that when that inner child is guiding you, you are aligned in your values. You are bringing out the best of you, your strengths, in service of others. So I think that would be the advice, to keep that picture in your wallet. Don't
mm.
resume it when you're 44. Um, have it with you from the age of
And
6.
you know what? I think I will do that. I'll put a picture of my 5-year-old next to my desk. I love that.
But I have it on my desktop because every time there is a difficult email or a difficult a challenge, or you need to zoom out,
Mm,
and you need to think, okay, let's say if it's Google Earth, I need to go from looking at the fence and the roof, I need to go and look at the neighborhood. So I need to really zoom out. And then I look at that kid and says, what would he have done?
I love
What is
that.
important to me today so that I can be mindful about my choices on this particular decision, but looking at through the prism of this innocent or shiny person
Yeah,
that was much wiser than we think.
I love that. Yeah, I have my vision board, my partner and my vision board on top of the screen, which is also nice. Like, okay, so why am I
Yes,
actually doing all of that
exactly right.
distance? What is your vision for the future? Because when I hear you speak about your work and the impact you're doing, I'm just in awe. And I would be curious, what do you hope this the impact to be, or the your work?
I'm also a father of pre-teens, so 10 and 11. And whether I look at participants in a workshop or what is around me, my core belief is that I'm not ambitious when it comes to roles and responsibilities. So my hope is that people realize that it's not about becoming a CEO, a CFO, an influencer, if that's your ambition. Um, but at some stage, sooner or later, you will have to stand up for something that you really truly believe in. And
Mm.
and that's what really leadership is about. That choice, intentional choice. Not as a grand gestures, I'm saving the world with a cape like a Superman or Wonder Woman, but in the small moment of every day, when the phone rings, when the doorbell, rings, um, when you have a difficult conversations coming up with one of your reports, when you have a difficult conversation coming up with one of your clients, how are you going to show up? So I think rediscovering that connection with yourself, whether it's and with others, and expanding that relational field to integrate different perspectives to progress the way that you are, in line with the person that you want to become. So this sort of work that is really deep and that can be kickstarted by a silly workshop in
Mm.
what was supposed to be a 2.5 day corporate event. That's my hope for the future, that
Mm.
that in a hyper connected reality, we've lost that key connection to ourselves. So start with that picture of a 5-year-old and start to ask yourself questions in what happens when you embrace yourself fully and you set intentions for your day that are in line with that. So
Mm.
I think there's so much to unlock in terms of human potential that focusing on the doing is actually a disservice to the doing, ultimately.
Mm. Mm. Focusing on the doing is disservice to the doing. Love it. Mic drop. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Miriam. It's the first time that I don't get told after 1 hour and a bit, you have to mute your microphone. So that to me was such a um, such a deep conversation, and I got really emotional at stages. And the opportunity to come up and to come in and share some views and progress them with you through your insights as well. I think, yeah, it's invaluable. And I hope that there is something for listeners to come away with. It's been such a honor, some food with gratitude. And I just want to thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you for taking me on this journey. Um, so many ideas and insights that just emerged from this. I'm sure that the audience will similarly just sit there and take note. Thank you, Manuel.
Thank you.
See you on your LinkedIn.